and today I will go for a dual recording of this class. I will record from the Google Meet as well as from the PowerPoint both. So, are you able to see this? Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mm. Then in PPT also there is an option to record it. So you might be able to see everything here. I'm coming to the here. Today, again, I will discuss about continuation of convex set or convexity of set. So, coming to outline of my today's class. So, here outline of my today's lectures are the following. First, I would like to discuss about norm balls and norm cones. These are very important because norm-word, we know that norm is a generalized concept of distance, or if you are dealing in any finite dimensional space, you need to know what kind of metric or what kind of norm you or what kind of distance you have to apply. So it is just you can call it is a generalized distance because in linear algebra class you might have already seen that there are variety of norm. So among those variety of norm, you can also find the equivalency. Every finite dimensional norm have just equivalent to each other. So so forget about different type of norm or variety of norm. So the topology with respect to a norm, what you will get will have the same equivalent structures. Don't worry about while dealing with norm. So most of norm that we will discuss about convex kind of norm. So if you're taking a P norm, I'm talking about P norm in general. So it is just generalized from two norms. So it is a convex norm when P is greater than equal to 1 and it will take value up to infinity. So P is greater than equal to 1 here, sub, subscript P, it is greater than equal to 1 and less than infinity. So in that case, you can talk about a convex kind of norm. And the corresponding cone structure, what we will get, that will give a convex cone. So I had already mentioned convex cone is very important in optimization. That's way. Suppose one just I'm just giving one more time one highlight of distance. Suppose we are here. So this definitely this point will have one coordinate structure. We are saying that it is having two coordinate that are 1 2. It is having coordinate 1 2. So what in how many way we can reach starting from origin we can reach here. So there are a variety of way. So each variety will give a norm. So simplest one is what you are saying that to just walk along the nose. That means a straight walk straight. So this is the simplest norm, and this norm we are calling it L2 norm or Euclidean norm. Now another norm is taxi cab norm that you or Manhattan norm. What you do, you walk along the horizontal axis. You are walking along the perpendicular axis and measuring the corresponding distance. So first walk along the horizontal axis to uh, 1 unit, then you need to walk along the vertical axis 2 unit in order to reach at this point. So in order to walk along perpendicular direction, then you are getting a total walk how much? It is 2 plus 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2, that means 3. So that distance we are calling it L1 distance. L1 distance. So L1 distance it would be 3, 1 plus 2. 1 unit along horizontal axis and 2 unit walking along vertical axis. And L2 distance, it would be for this point, it would be uh, a square root of 4 plus 1. That means a square root of 5. Now, similarly, there is one more distance that we are calling it relative kind of distance. So, what you do, you walk along horizontal axis, also vertical axis, and try to compare which one is the having maximum magnitude. So if you are walking along horizontal axis, then your magnitude is 1. But if you are walking along vertical axis, then you are getting larger magnitude. That one is 2. So that's where your relative norm, that or L infinity norm or soup norm, it would be 2. So you have to always compare uh, your length of walk along each individual axis, and which one will be greatest, that would represent your soup norm or L infinity norm. So you have already seen the norms, different kind of norm. Apart from that, there are variety of norms. So these norms all are convex norm. So norm between L2 and L1. So there are variety of norm. So all these are curvilinear norm or convex norm, we can call it. Uh, these are having curve structure, so curve walking. So it is all about walking. What is the path of walking from one point to another point? Now, apart from this, there are other norm that we are calling it non-convex norm. So non-convex norm, it is walking above like this way. So it's a non-convex pattern. You can observe that here we are getting non-convex path. So these are non-convex paths. So non-convex path is associated with every non-convex path is associated with when you are taking value of p less than 1 and up to 0, less than 1 up to 0. In that case, this norm, you will get a non-convex norm. So generally L not norm that introduce a sparsity in the solution, we are calling it a non-convex norm because of this definition. So here uh, what we observe, it is non-convex when p is less greater than equal to 0 and less than 1. So that kind of norm we are calling it non-convex norm. And convex is nice. Convex norm, if we are having a convex norm, then we can guarantee the existence of global optimal solution. So that is the criteria. It is non-convex when, and this one is convex norm. If p is greater than equal to 1, we are calling it convex norm. So you are having two different kind of norm now. You can call it convex norm and non-convex norm. So those things we will discuss a little bit, and we will apply a lot in coming modules and concept. So after covering the norm, then I will go to discuss about Euclidean ball and ellipsoidal. Euclidean, there is a very strong relation between Euclidean ball and ellipsoidal. Ball means simply if you are talking about 2D ball, then it is just a disc. 2D ball happens to be a disc. This disc. So now it is a circular kind of disc. From the circular kind of disc, how can you get a elliptical disc? So this is the elliptical disc, where there are two kind of in a circular disc. Both axes happen to be equal to each other, horizontal axis and vertical axis. But if you see in elliptical disc, what you observe, you are having one major axis. This is the major axis, and this is the minor axis. So how you are getting it? You are getting it by an affine transformation of Euclidean ball to uh, this ellipse. So you need to define one affine transformation. It happens like this way. What is meaning of affine transformation? That means you take any point from this ball, call it x. So apply a linear transformation over x, and then you are adding a bias, call it b. In order to this transformation, we are calling it affine transformation. So under this affine transformation, you are getting a output y equal to ax plus b. So that is the criteria under affine transformation we are getting. So this transformation, it happens to be invertible as well. So there is no issue. If you are having elliptical ball, you can get back your reverse ball. But there is a representation issue that I will talk about. What representation would be there, and elliptical approach is having very interesting application in Gaussian distribution. You might have already seen that if you want to write this protein density function of multivariate Gaussian, then it is taking this kind of form: exponential of half exponential to the power half into x minus c transpose sigma inverse, that we are calling it covariance matrix, into C happens to be center of the ellipse. So, so like this way. So this term is what? This term is, we are calling it, it defines an ellipse. Ellipse in 2D, ellipsoidal in a higher dimension. So that is the criteria here. So we need to know that if you take identity matrix, sorry, if you take this covariance matrix as identity matrix, then you will get a disk or ball kind of structure. If you are taking your covariance matrix as identity matrix, then it just become a circular disk or ball kind of things. So that is the idea. And you know that whether you are studying machine learning or system identification, that means dynamical system in EC or machine learning is even it is applicable everywhere. So what you do, always you deal with a finite number of data points. So that data point we are calling it sample. So when you are dealing with sample, with respect to that sample, you don't know the distribution of that sample. You need to know what is the distribution of sample, or from which distribution that sample came. So your ultimate idea to develop a machine learning technique is to find distribution from which the sample has been generated. So you do that. So there are many techniques. Either you go for parametric technique or non-parametric technique. So how can we that generate that distribution? So in order to generate that distribution, you get some kind of pattern from the data itself. So based on that pattern, you apply a modular structure. Now, after that modular structure, once you are having a modular structure, you go for estimation of the parameter or non-parameter, or estimation of parameter in case of parametric model, and estimation of function directly in case of non-parametric approach. So that is the idea. So estimation is an optimization problem. So there, what we do, if I even many of example, if you see, things are happens that mostly we consider that things are, if your sample size is very big, then sampling theorem it says that mostly things are distributed in Gaussian pattern, or normally distributed. So normal distribution, that's why you can say that if you know everything about normal distribution, then it provides the best tool to approximate any kind of distribution with the help of normal distribution. It is just talking about, I'm talking about central limit theorem. So it is all about central limit theorem. You might have already gone through in probability classes as well. So I might have already discussed those things. So that is the idea, to see maximum use of ellipsoidal in distribution as well, or in sampling as well. After that, I will talk about few examples from convex preserving operation. So we need to know that what kind of operation will preserve convexity. Like if you sum two convex set, then sum would be again a convex set. But sum is not general numerical sum kind of things. Here we are talking about sum of two sets. So that sum we will discuss about Minkowski kind of sum. So pictorial, I had taken already pictorial example of such Minkowski sum. After that, at the end, I will discuss about separation of convex set, and because this one is very interesting concept. So today, I will discuss much about separation theorem. In next class onward, I will discuss about one important part of separation theorem. That one we are calling it supporting of convex, and Farkas lemma. Farkas lemma is very important in case of linear programming or linear problem. So coming to again, recall a spectral cone. In last part I haven't covered. It is a very a standard kind of convex cone. So we had already gone through polyhedral cone. Diffusion of polyhedral cone was like this way: x such that matrix time x, we are observing a matrix infinity is greater than equal to some bias or how we had expressed polyhedral form in term of uh, half spaces, intersection of several half spaces. When you are talking about matrices, then you are talking about intersection of subspaces. So it was a polyhedral cone. So now I am coming to define a spectral norm. A spectral norm, it is more generalized than polyhedral norm. Whenever a spectral term is coming, generally you deal with symmetric and positive definite matrix and the corresponding eigenvalue. We know that if you are having a positive definite and symmetric matrix, then easily we can decompose that matrix into eigenvalue and eigenvector form. That means I am talking about if F is positive definite or symmetric matrix, then we can decompose this one in terms of orthogonal matrix. That one is the column of that is coming from eigenvector of A times diagonal matrix where diagonal element are coming from eigenvalue of A times V transpose. Because V is orthogonal matrix, so inverse of that matrix it would be V transpose itself. So we can always do that kind of spectral decomposition. That's way. If you don't have a matrix which is not symmetric in nature, then we can't do that spectral decomposition. For those kind of general rectangular matrix, we can do SVD, singular value decomposition. So singular value decomposition, I will discuss whenever there is a need of that. But you need to recall a few things from singular value decomposition. If you are having a matrix A, no worry. If it is not symmetric, then what you do? To multiply with transpose of this. Now, the resultant new matrix is it would be a symmetric and positive definite matrix. You can observe that. That means for general perspective, if you are having a matrix, whether it is symmetric or not symmetric, whether it is positive definite or not positive definite, always you can construct from the given matrix a positive definite matrix A into A transpose or A transpose into A. So through that, you can always convert a symmetric matrix, and that would be also positive definite. If you do that so in the process of doing that, you will be able to decompose the matrix. Any rectangle here, remember that I'm talking about is any rectangular matrix, any general rectangular matrix. So you can decompose into three matrix: U time sigma time V inverse. So U here U and V inverse or here U and V both are happens to be orthogonal matrix. So that's why U inverse equal to V, and V inverse equal to V transpose. So here these two are orthogonal matrix and sigma is the diagonal matrix. So what is it? This kind of decomposition we are calling it singular value decomposition. There is a very good interesting theory. If you want to know much about singular value decomposition, go and watch MIT video of OCW video lecture from Gilbert Strang. He is the best person to explain singular value decomposition. Gilbert Strang recently he had taken one class about linear algebra and data learning from data in 2018, I think. There you can learn a lot. He discussed a lot about application of SVD from different perspective. Go and watch that in video YouTube. YouTube you will get those lecture, and you will understand a lot about SVD. It is just a pure linear algebra tool. Pure linear algebra concept. So there you will get a lot of information about that. So now I am coming to discuss about here. So I mentioned that no, you are with respect to this symmetric structure. Oh, sorry, a spectral structure. You are getting a class of matrices which are symmetric and positive semi-definite. That we denote it by Sn plus. So this class of function it always form a cone in the space of matrices, in the space of spectral matrices. And what is the criteria? If you try to look from the derivable perspective, what is the dimension of this one? It is not n square, it is less than n square. So, so what is happen in general? Actually, it happens to be I'm taking just n equal to a special case. So if you take n equal to 2, then you will get S2 plus. So S2 plus happens to be, it is a collection of all 2 by 2 positive definite symmetric matrix. So here easily you can visualize it. So S2 plus will include this kind of element. if you are taking a variable matrix, which is a positive, definite, and symmetric. So this kind of element it would be here, but it must be symmetric. So here we observe three variable. So S2 plus it would be a subspace of remember the subspace of R3, three-dimensional space, and in that process it is forming a cone structure. So that graph in last class I had already discussed here. You can see it here. Oh, no, I just left that. Okay, so that one is all. A spectral cone is already over. I'm coming to discuss about norm balls and norm cones. In between, if you have any doubt, any question, uh, you can ask directly. Audio question is allowed, but regarding comment, I don't want to shift from the presentation slide. So that's why if you want to get answer, so better put your doubt and question there in the Google Classroom. There later I will answer it. But here in Google Meet, I'm not looking back to comment section, so that's why impossible to give answer to that written that comment in comment box. So what you do, either you ask by audio or you can put in Google Classroom. In Google Classroom, you will get answer of that later. Okay, so I'm coming to describe about norm ball. So in order to define a norm ball you can say that it is just a uh, real valued non-negative function from Rn to R. If you are defining over n-dimensional Euclidean space, then it is a function such that it satisfying two property. First property is that we are calling this property, we are calling, if you want to say in short form, this property we are calling it a positive semi-definite property. If you want to say, that means it's talking about non-negative of norm. Norm always it would be norm of any factor. It always would be non-negative because because it is a distance. So distance can't be negative. It must be either zero or positive quantity. Again, if you observe that one factor is having zero norm, it implies that that vector would be zero. That means if you are having zero vector, and vice versa is also true. That the norm of that zero vector is zero. Second property, it is talking about homogeneity. That means if you take a scalar multiple of vector and finding the norm, then it would be just equal to magnitude of the norm times norm of the vector. This property we are calling it homogeneity. Third one is very interesting, that you know that it is a triangle property. It satisfy. It says that it is just related with triangle property of triangle. It says that sum of okay, length of largest side is always less than equal to sum of other side. So that means you have one vector this x, another vector is this, another side is y length. Okay, then resultant would be from the addition of vector. You can know that third side would be x plus y in the vector algebra. If you because here x is vector, y is vector, all are so summation happens in vector form. So if you ask that, if you calculate the length of this one, the length of third largest side, largest third is the largest side, x plus y is the largest side. It would be always less than equal to from sum of the respective other side. This length of this side and plus length of this side. You might have already seen that definition there in your high school mathematics as well. It is not a very difficult kind of thing, but norm is satisfying these three conditions. Okay. So given a norm, we can define normal. So once we are having normal norm, then we can define two kind of norm. So here intensely I have taken open kind of a structure. So this norm is, we are calling it open norm. So if you are in 2D, so that means we are not including boundary, just we are including interior of this disk. So this is 2D ball. 2D ball, so exclude exclude boundary. And here this one is 2D closed ball. This one is 2D open ball, and this one is 2D closed ball, where we include boundary as well. So we include everything here inside. So we include boundaries. Here you can observe that less than equal to r. Here, the distance of any point from the center, x is the center of the ball, is less than r. That means it is not including the boundary. It is somewhat related to open interval. Same criteria you can define it is open interval. So how can you define if you are in 1D, then your norm just become what? It becomes modulus. So it is talking about modulus of x minus xc is less than r in 1D. And if you break it into infinity, then it will take this form. X is greater than xc minus r and less than xc plus r. It is in 1D. So what is this one? This one is just talking about interval. It is less than, so it is talking about open interval. So it is open interval. Here, the first terminal point is initial point, it is x minus r, but we excluded. We are excluding, this one is also we are excluding last terminal point xc plus r, open interval. Similarly, you can define closed interval as well. So this closed ball, it is related with some kind of closed interval, generalization of closed interval. Okay, so all these are about norm balls. So I'm now coming to define about norm cone. So a few more structure I have already taken as an example. You can look into here. Unit ball is very important. What is happening that if you are defining a general ball like B X C R, then you can always represent that ball as a translation of unit ball. So you can write this ball as xc plus r time unit ball. That means unit ball is having center at origin and radius happens to be 1. If you are taking any general kind of radius is 1. It is 1 here, it would be. Okay. So here radius is coming as 1. So this is the another representation of ball. So so don't worry to look into general ball kind of things. So from unit ball also you can describe everything, but you need to know this transformation, this kind of transformation, how you do shifting of origin and how you stretching the radius and other kind of things. Those things are coming. So if you look into L1 ball, that L1, so your unit ball, it would be diagonal diamond shape. In 2D, this is the unit ball. If you want to see L2 ball, then L2 ball in 2 dimension, it is just this kind of this. And if you want to look into unit ball with respect to max norm or L infinity norm, then this is the square. This square is the unit ball. So these are the very elementary things you need to understand how these things are coming. So in order to understand, just write down the definition of norm. So in 2D, what is the definition of one norm? It is just talking about magnitude of walk along the corresponding axes. So x1. So if you want to find L1 norm, so it would be magnitude of x1 first coordinate plus times magnitude of second coordinate. You can ask why I am taking magnitude only, because distance can't be negative. So distance is always non-negative. So this one is in 2D or in R2. This represent one norm. Now, if you want to represent L2 norm of the same point, so it is a square root of, just you are applying Pythagoras theorem, x1 a square and a square of a modulus is the same. So x1 a square plus x2 square, and just you are solving in that process what you are getting, you are getting an equation of this, that x1 square plus x2 square, it must be less than equal to 1. you do a squaring both sides, then it would be just a disk equation of a disk that is coming from circle. And here L infinity or infinity norm, you will talk about max of which one is the max or supremum of walk along the respective axis, which is the maximum. So you are talking in sense of relative. So maximum of x1, modulus of x1 or magnitude of x1 and x2. In 2D, there are only two coordinates. That's why I'm taking two compare. So this is the unit ball with respect to max norm. Now, if you want to see the plot of unit ball in case of non-convex norm, that means the scenario when you observe P is greater than equal to 0 and P less than 1, then you are getting this kind of a unit ball is this kind of a structure. So what you observe here from the unit ball, definitely it is a non-convex structure. This set is a non-convex. Why? If you take one point here, another point here, and if you join the line segment between these 2 points, definitely the line segment is completely out of the set. So this set happens to be, this unit wall happens to be a non-convex structure. So that's why we generally not going for non-convex kind of norm. If it is non-convex, then we can do approximation. So what would be approximation of this norm? The best approximation you will get from L1 norm. So what this is the L1 norm by finding convex hull. So if you approximation you will get through with convex combination or convex hull. So you find the convex hull. So this is the this process we are calling it convexification. So you have to do convexification. So after convexification or finding the convex hull, your resultant optimization problem, non-convex problem, it will be converted into convex problem. So that one is a convexation approach. But you do here approximation a lot. So you need to impose further condition in order to get exact recovery of solution. So that exact recovery one is coming from a sparsity that if time allows, then I may discuss there how that exact recovery is happening. So recovery process is very important. So if you are trying to find solution of a system not from the problem itself, so problem from the another problem, another approximate problem, so then you have to talk about recovery. So exact recovery process. So what is the criteria of recovery? You need to know that. So that criteria that time I will discuss during algorithmic section. So now I am coming to discuss about Euclidean ball and ellipsoidal. So Euclidean ball is again in ball with respect to L2 norm. We are calling it Euclidean ball. So this is the definition of Euclidean ball. I had already discussed. Now what you do from the Euclidean ball, you can apply a linear transformation or affine transformation. You can convert this Euclidean ball into this ellipsoidal ball. So one thing what you do, you are taking a disc and pressing. So pressing. So while pressing, you are exerting pressure. So in that exerting force, so in that process, what you do? So one axis of this disc becomes a minor axis along the direction of force, and another becomes a major axis. So along the direction of force, this becomes minor axis, and this becomes major axis, and you are getting a ellipsoidal ball. So in ellipsoidal ball, if you ask what does this represent simply semi-axis. What the relation? What is the relation with the transformation? So you can say that these are coming as an eigenvector of the transformation. So these are the eigenvector of the transformation. And what is the magnitude? What is the length of this one? So length of this happens to be a square root of eigenvalue of the corresponding transformation. So that is the relation. So it is all about pure linear algebra or affine transformation. So from there, from with the help of eigenpair, you can explain ellipsoidal in a very perfect way. So alpha I square I have taken. So alpha I square you can take it as a lambda like this way. So alpha I would be a square root of lambda is eigenvalue. So alpha I would be what? Your a square root of eigenvalue, corresponding eigenvalue. A square root of corresponding eigenvalue. So you can call it magnitude, easily you can get it. So it is pure linear algebra approach you can get from there. Okay. So now just few example. I'm not going to much mathematical description of convexity preserving operation. I will give a few pictorial representation here. So what you do? So take, if it is talking about summation, take a polyhedra like this way and sum it with one hyperplane kind of a structure. So if you sum it up, the resultant would be this structure. So this kind of sum we are calling it Minkowski sum. Oh, sorry, a spelling mistake here. Minkowski. He is a very famous mathematician. He has done a lot of things in geometry. Minkowski. By name, it appears that he might be from Russia. So this it is talking about sum of two set. Remember that it's sum of not just a scalar number. It's talking about sum of two set. Now another take a square kind of a structure and sum it with one line or hyperplane. So after summing, then you will get this kind of a structure. So all these are talking about uh, talking about sum of two set. So here, in case of convex, you are taking if both happens to be convex, then you will get a convex structure. If it is not convex, then it is not guaranteed that you will get a convex sum is convex structure. So as a homework, you can look into a very interesting kind of example that it is talking about Fourier series, collection of Fourier series. So that you, what you do, S is defined as a coefficient of a Fourier series. Remember that S is a coefficient of Fourier series. So coefficient always happens to be what? Finite. So it is a finite Fourier series, or you can call it partial Fourier series. A partial Fourier series. That means you are not going for all the term of Fourier series, just two m number of terms you have taken. So with respect to m number of terms, definitely how many constant coefficient you will get, m coefficient you will get, so that you are considering in this set S. So now you have to find the structure of this one. So it is totally depend upon T, point wise T. So you have to find the intersected set of this one. So for each, so you can define this set S by in this way, ST. For each T, you can define it like this way. Such that X belongs, and take a very simple case, M equal to 2. Here I have taken it M equal to 2. That means a Fourier series of a given function, it is just involving two terms, two cosine terms. Very hard representation of Fourier series. So here we will call it X belongs to R2, such that X1 times cos t plus X2 times cos 2t. First two copies term we had taken. And condition is that norm of this one, it would be less than equal to 1. Condition is 0. One more condition is that t is taking value between minus pi by 3 to pi by 3. So for each t, we are defining like this way. So when we are talking about for each t, that means you are fixing t point y. So for each t like this way, your intention is that you have to find a set S which would be intersection of all these xt. So it is an uncountable intersection. So you have to find the intersection region. So here plot is already I have taken here. So what you will observe for each t would be fixed. So if t is fixed, then what does it mean? So you are getting a this kind of a structure. You are getting a line, like you are getting a hyperplane ax1 plus bx2, and it is bounded, modulus of this one is bounded by 1. That means this one is greater than minus 1 and less than 1. So it is, what does it talk about? It is talking about one strip. So if you are able to write equation of this one, that ax1 plus bx2 equal to 1 and ax2 plus bx2 equal to 1. So suppose this kind of equation is coming, parallel set of equation will come. So it is talking about this strip, this kind of a strip. So you have to take intersection of all those strip in. So infinitely a strip, many a strip are here. So this is the intersected region. This is the intersected region, and this is what it would be definitely convex. What you observe, it is a convex structure. So it is convex structure, and something more than that. What kind of structure you are getting? It is not just a polyhedral. It is more than it is not polyhedral because you are due to infinite intersection. You observe curve kind of a structure here at the corner. At the corner, you observe curve kind of a structure. It is not a kink or non-differentiable point. So these points are, so you are getting a smooth boundary. So very nice structure. If there is a smooth boundary, you won't face much problem in with respect to differentiation and other kinds. You are getting a smooth boundary. So nice structure. So this, so non, so you can say that you are getting a nonlinear structure, nonlinear boundary. So a convex set with non-linear boundary, linear boundary with respect to polyhedral kind of a structure. But if you take infinite uncountable union, then you, sorry, intersection, then you are getting a convex structure with lin, non-linear boundary. Okay, so proper. I would like to avoid it. Already, I think. I I'm planning to discuss few things about separation theorem. Then I will wind up this class today because we are just going to converge to final time. So what is why separation theorem we are going for? If you are using a supporting a machine, support a vector machine algorithm to find an optimal hyperplane that perfectly separate a linearly separable data points into different classes, what you do here? How can you find that optimal hyperplane? It is all about finding the optimal hyperplane that is that will act as a linear classifier. So how can you find that? You can find that by maximizing the margin. Margin, that means the distance between the hyperplane and the data sample closest to it. And to find the hyperplane that give optimal hyperplane, that means that separate the given data in a best way. So that is all about supporting hyperplane. So it is all about finding the optimal hyperplane. So it is, so that's way. So it is talking about separation. So it separate data two different kind of data class. So I had already mentioned that it is just a special case of separation theorem, separation of two convex sets. So here you observe two convex set. I'm making convex hull like this way. So you are talking about separation of two convex sets. So I will discuss in detail separation of two convex sets. So always draw plot things in a convex pattern. Okay. So you are applying a separation theorem. Okay. If you have any doubt, you can ask it. Otherwise, I'm going to wind up this class today because it is already 10:45. So I don't want to miss the deadline. Anyone, any question, any doubt regarding attendance? You can go to Google Classroom and mark your attendance. Any doubt? Any question? You can ask. If there is no doubt, no question, then I'm going